Calling this meeting of the Stockbridge Planning Board to order tonight. Thanks you all for coming. As usual, first item is approval of the minutes of the last meeting, March 15th. Can I have a motion to approve them?
So moved.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Jennifer, can you call the roll, please?
Kate?
Aye.
Nancy?
Aye.
Gary?
Aye.
Bill?
Aye.
Marie?
Aye.
Wayne?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. Can I suggest that we, in the interest of Kara's time, we move her, if you're ready, up to this point rather than have you hang around for other points that are not so relevant for you. I mean, you're welcome to stay for as long as you want.
I've planned on it.
But I imagine you've got other things you want to do. So why don't we ask you to do the presentation on ADUs and flexible parcel zoning, please.
Oh, hi. There's my brother.
Hi, Carol.
Hi,
Hi, Carl.
we're just starting.
Is that all
This
right?
is my designated chair. Here we go.
Wherever you'd like to sit.
You're the teacher.
All right. The lecture will begin.
Thank you.
Okay, Kara, whenever you're ready.
That off on the big screen, Jen, from the agenda.
I'm sorry?
I'm asking, Jen, are you gonna pull the big screen up?
No.
No? Okay, so everyone has this from your packet then?
Yes,
Table of
Yes.
regulations?
yes.
Okay. So. So just combing through this table of use regulations, I edited it so that it did not include anything other than the A, principal uses district, residential uses. You can see my comments very simply with the track changes. Just going down to number 2, under residential uses, my comment on adding the B district, that was a suggestion from the building inspector, Ned. So,
I'm sorry, are you on, where are you starting with the ADUs or?
I'm starting on the table of use regulation under number 2, where it leads with 2-family dwelling.
Got it, okay.
Yep, so that first comment is adding B district into the permitted use. That was suggested by the building inspector. So moving on, number 3, the multifamily dwelling as regulated in section 6.9 of this bylaw. Under the district RC, I have a comment there that after combing through the parcels in this area, about definitely less than half of the parcels in the RC district are significantly smaller than that 3/4 acre designation. And those that are larger are not residential uses. So to have I think it's a little more minute than what we're really looking at still, but just having that amendment in there, you know, if we're doing this as a lump sum, if that's the planning board's wish. And then you'll see minor edits just with the numbering on the left-hand side, as well as the removal of the existing on January 1, 1976 language. For my clarification, where did that come from? Jen told me a little bit about it, I recall now. Kate, anyone, Marie, does anyone know about that?
It was always there when I was here.
Okay, because Ned discussed it a little bit about when a select board was,
Gary would be the
a
one.
former select board, Gary?
Gary, do you know?
Do you have any
You're the
Which one are we on?
sense of
Been
history?
here. Why
Just
the
the-
language,
Yeah, the
why
dates.
the language that
It's
says
sort of the idea, I believe,
Existing.
was, you know, that you have more of an incremental, you don't just sort of open the doors wide.
Okay, so just.
Yeah.
less clarity.
Yep.
Okay. All right, so, and then on that front page of the table, you see just other minor, very minor amendments. Mostly grammar in there, and Yep, now I'm gonna flip to the back for what is label 4.7, where it reads with conversion of. I edited that language a bit to read conversion of part of an existing structure to an accessory structure. And then I removed that January 1, 1990 date as well, adding or the new construction of an accessory dwelling unit, it's really a tongue twister, is permitted. And then those four requirements listed there in black are your original requirements. Below that, in the A, B, C, D format, I tried to differentiate our suggestions of mine. And then you'll see on the right, just the formatting there. That's nothing to pull over. So I know that's a pretty quick representation of it, but most of the edits on here are either formatting or date removal.
So if we adapt these changes, changes you've just walked us through, is this sufficient? Do we need to do anything else to establish the rules around ADUs?
That I'll have to double check on, as this is my first rodeo with the zoning here in
Yeah.
Massachusetts, coming from New York. But I believe there are some towns that have the standalone table of regulations. I know we're doing this kind of tandem with the bylaw.
Right.
So I think that's more of a question for your colleagues than seeing, what the board as a whole
The select board, you
is interested in
mean?
doing.
Yeah.
If it's changing part of the zoning
It's
bylaws,
gotta go to.
usually, you have to have a public meeting and, and then vote on it. And, then we give it to the selectmen and it goes to town meeting. And if it's voted in, then it's sent to the Attorney General.
Right.
Is this too late for this year?
Yeah, it won't happen this year.
What's today, April 5th? Yeah, so,
So in the original table of uses, that 50% of all rental units still created be rented as affordable housing. How is that monitored?
please explain where you are. Are you in the bylaw or are you on the table?
Table.
Okay.
So under 4.47,
So the conversion, okay.
I mean, it's existing, it's our existing wording.
Yep, that 50% of all rental units.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there's been discussion of, how some of these things are monitored. So, and if, if the intent is to, where to go, is to provide some affordable housing, can we look into that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely. And that kind of may overlap with this other initiative that I'll be talking about tonight. Just housing in general really is the overlap, but I'll make note of that, Kate, sure.
Could you also check on driveways? Clearly this is going to require extra driveway space.
Okay.
So how does that play out? And then have you looked at 6.9, that section in the bylaw?
A touch, Ned and I looked it over last.
I think that's worth looking over pretty carefully.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
What page is that on? I'm sorry, I was looking.
But 6.9?
Yeah.
Well, it's on page
And that is,
53 in my old bylaw, but
All right, okay.
I need to update my bylaw.
I've got signs for this table here.
I know, I still have them updated.
I know, I just have all my little notes, so
I know. That's what we were just saying.
Okay, no,
you got it?
Yeah.
Page 59.
For multifamily. Is that what you were looking for, Carl?
yes, I am, thank you.
6.9 and 6.10 are relevant to both of these.
I believe somewhere 6.69 is referenced. Well, they're both referenced, yep, in the multifamily section in particular.
So the 50% affordable and the driveways, and then this section of the bylaw. And let's see, oh, I know, I have sort of a small administrative favor to ask. Would you mind dating the drafts as they come out so that I can?
Yeah, I did that with this one. I learned my lesson on that.
Oh, beautiful, thank you.
Yeah, I'll put like headers or footers.
Something, yeah, thank you so much.
That helps me too.
Yeah,
Very honest.
I know, I've got this pile of things at home, yeah, okay.
I know. And then my little file on my laptop for work, it's got, fiscal year 21 and then 22, and I go back and forth to look at, and see, because I'm coming into this movie halfway through.
Yes.
So I'm trying to see what's been done and, try and create,
Right,
you
right.
know.
No, and I appreciate your starting with doing the red line and starting with our original.
Yes,
That's
yep, I knew that was a request, so
Yep, good.
that's absolutely not a problem.
Yeah, very good, thank you.
Any other comments, concerns, questions?
I guess we have to remember this before next year, so that it gets dealt with at town meeting in 2023.
Hopefully we can, obviously, not obviously, but as Jen says, she's got much more experience with this.
Well, we should probably just
If we kind
Go
of
ahead and do
finalize
it,
it,
and-
yeah.
do it and then it's ready to go. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
Tee
you
it
know.
up, kind of get all our ducks in a row and then.
Call for a public meeting, and as Jennifer
Right.
laid out. And
Yeah, I'd like to sort of, I appreciate you going through it, and I have these questions, and I'd love to get answers to those questions and have a little board discussion if people are game for it.
but that can happen at a public meeting, right?
Can happen at either.
Yeah, but if we're going to have a public meeting and get the ball rolling towards, a change in the bylaw, we can talk about it outside of this is a public meeting.
Public hearing.
It's not a public hearing.
Right, right,
But we'll need to have one.
yeah. But, personally, I'd like to be able to, I might not have any, questions, but I'd like to be able to discuss it as a board and before we go into a public hearing.
Just as an overview, I wasn't here for the first round.
Welcome to the second half of the movie.
What is the overall purpose of the community?
So I would ask perhaps the chair, where this desire came from.
So Wayne, remember,
Language, or is it actually structurally?
well, so it started in a previous with Phil Arnold, remember? And that was, where we first started working on it. And then it sort of fell by the wayside a bit. But we did have some board discussions about it. Remember, we were kind of talking about the business district and,
Because I thought at one point, when you asked about the driveways, that we had made an adjustment somewhere along the way for accommodating the additional people in the building and a potential of another car. Now, I don't know, I don't recall if it was this, but
we had that, we changed the driveway bylaw because Ned wanted us to have,
A driveway.
for every lot to
not
have two.
necessarily for this. We did that, that was a
Yeah.
separate issue.
It was a
Right.
separate issue, but that, is relevant
Right.
to how this plays out, right? Yeah.
And then the other was, which would rule the day on, is not larger in floor area, half the floor area of the principal, one is not more, I'm sorry, it's
Like C.
4.C.
Okay,
Is one of those,
whichever is smaller.
So it might be good to add that wording in there. And then just a small typo, or I think you mean 900 square feet, not 900 feet squared, which would be 181,000.
For parking, couldn't we say that any residents to the ADU have to have secured off-street parking added into the bylaw?
We could.
We
You can
probably
reference
should,
the
'cause that's what Ned was getting at when he was saying we needed
I mean, I think
parking for
that's
everybody.
simple enough to,
Yeah,
no matter how the ADU plays out, whether you're adding a person or you're just doing something because it's more convenient for the people that already live on the property, everybody has to have a parking place that's off of the street,
right.
contained either within, either they find a place to park or it has to be on the,
Not in the street.
Makes perfect sense.
Well, I think it would be good for everyone to take a look at 6.9 before we discuss this again, because there's provision for, I think it's in there. It addresses concerns over parking as that impacts neighboring properties. So I think there's something in there about,
Well, it says off-street parking space shall be located to the rear of the building,
right,
setback line, and at least 50 feet from any,
Yeah.
one of the standards set forth in section 6.2, but that pretty much is
that
saying
doesn't
what
say that you can't park on the street.
it doesn't quite say that.
Right.
It implies it.
yeah,
Implications. Yeah.
yeah, and then it goes on to say off-street parking space shall be located to the rear of the building setback line. Yeah, is that what you just read, Carl?
Yes.
Yeah. Any driveway within the development shall be set back from any side or rear property line, not less than 50 feet. I mean, these are, provisions intended to maintain the character
But it
of the area.
doesn't clearly say what Gary wanted it
Yeah.
to say.
No.
It doesn't clearly say there needs to be an off-street parking space for every, I don't know,
Well,
not person,
I don't know.
but every
I mean,
apartment or
well,
whatever.
If you say that, not everybody has a car either.
Right.
I mean,
well,
so,
no,
Based off
but I think
of
that's what Ned was getting at back when he
Yeah.
was talking about every
but we got to
place
frame it
needed a
somehow so
driveway.
that anybody that does have a vehicle
You could add.
Doesn't our,
contained in that
You could
spot.
add a sentence here.
wouldn't our current driveway bylaw, which speaks to that, address that? I would think it would.
It should,
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe it does.
I'll
should.
include that when I hunt for the driveway.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah,
Good.
maybe, just reference the driveway bylaw or something like that. That's
There you
fine.
go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is just.
Okay. Any other comments, questions about this? I don't think we have any public participants. Or do we?
Steve, is anyone there?
They'd be up,
There and Mike Canales.
Mike was there and
Mike,
he's off the
our son.
screen now. There we go.
oh, there he is.
Hi.
Hey, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
So bright out.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I'm straight.
Shall we move on to flexible parcelable? Flexible parcelable?
Flex parcel zoning initiative, absolutely. So
Parcels.
those slides
Yeah.
are mostly, the meat and the bones to it. So I read in the 2016 visioning report that housing was a topic that yielded the most mixed responses in the town of Stockbridge, if you can believe it. Residents are challenged to find models for increasing housing for seniors and families while integrating that housing into the design and character of the town. Housing growth is a complicated issue facing most all communities, and approaches and strategies vary from A to Z. So without going into the vision for 2036, which was included in that 2016 report, let's stick to reality because that's where we are. So in response to Mr. White's Flex Parcel Zoning Initiative, I researched similar actions taken by other municipalities. The idea of modifying our existing zoning in the R2 and R4 districts with the goal of providing more flexibility in what can be built while reducing the outsized impact that expensive land prices are having on our ability, your ability, to expand your stock of more modest housing. It's something that's been heard before, in similar fashions. So the cost of Stockbridge, I don't need to tell you, is on the minds of many stakeholders in the community. Fortunately, though, this problem is not unique, like I just discussed. It's found in almost every desirable community. This means we aren't a lone wolf on this venture to solve these problems of housing affordability. So let's see, those slides, it goes over the proposal. That's straight from Patrick's slides himself. And then it goes into the restrictions. So I just came up with a few comments on those restrictions. We've got 6 that are listed there. Again, this must be contiguous, if you're on that slide.
Yep.
So it reads, units must be contiguous, maintains open space on the parcel, and avoids the visual perception of sprawl. So by nature, these 2 and 3 units are contiguous. Though I do wonder, contiguous with what? Are there existing structures that may be added into this initiative? And the sprawl would, for Gary, it would look different than it would look to Marie as far as sprawl goes.
Can I stop you, Carl?
Yes.
I'm curious about the definition of contiguous. What,
Next door.
you look at these pictures of single, 2, and 3 family houses. I know they're just schematic. Is a house with an open breezeway connecting to another building, is that contiguous?
I would believe so.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's about having a property line that, is a shared property line.
But if that's all it is, it wouldn't need to be connected. Right? The 2 buildings would not necessarily need to be connected.
Well, our bylaws wouldn't allow.
I mean, is sustainability a goal here?
I was going to say, I think that's part of it, and I think just, again, the visual part of it, instead of having 2 or 3 structures, it would be one larger structure.
Right.
And we also have to think, luckily Jennifer sent me the sewer line, which
Yeah.
is pretty minimal. So that's another part of it, having one structure, having one sewer line, and all that kind of engineering instead of, the parcel kind of branching out that way. And again, this is just my reactions to the proposal,
Yeah,
so.
okay. I don't want to get into the weeds.
Yeah,
Necessarily,
definitely look
but-
into at least that definition.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess one question I have for you is you say, this is Patrick's wording or, okay. One question I have is expand our stock of more modest housing. It's sort of like a definition of modest housing, right? And then, the same with the many stakeholders in the community. Kind of want to know who those stakeholders are considered to be, right?
Hold on, let me go back to where you're talking about.
Hot topic of housing slide.
Yes. Yep. Yeah, modest housing, I quoted him there. And the stakeholders is from the visioning report. So that's from there. The
Are they-
modest housing is a quote.
Are they specified in that report?
Yeah, the stakeholders themselves?
Yeah,
No,
it's just stakeholders.
yeah, that was the.
I mean,
And read
is-
that as anybody else that owns property in town. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't know why they would be called stakeholders at that point.
that's a common
It's-
current usage that everybody loves.
Yeah, it's just like it could be the Red Lion Inn, it could be Kripalu, it could be,
Residents
I
and
mean,
businesses.
Wayne, you're right, it's ownership.
Yeah, it's anyone who has a dog in the fight, I guess. Again, just from the vision. So if we go back to that restrictions slide on number 2, and we already kind of overlapped with this, septic would need to be permitted based on the total number of bedrooms across all units. That's where I would refer to the building inspector and the sewer department.
Isn't that a state requirement?
Yes, yes.
That's how
But
septic
I
is.
don't know those state
Right,
requirements. So I would ask,
Yeah.
definitely ask Ned on that one.
Yeah.
As far as number 3, short-term rentals, I think we would exclude this, as there is already a bylaw on your books. I don't think it belongs here.
Agree. I agree.
Okay,
I mean, the only reason to include it is that it's, why wouldn't short-term rentals be permitted in these circumstances?
I don't think that's what
That's not the purpose.
would read. I think if this initiative would overlap with short-term rentals, you could include, reference this section in that existing bylaw.
Okay.
That's just what I would think.
I mean, I think Patrick is interested in affordable and missing middle housing. That's my take on, what he's looking to do here from talking to him. I don't think that a short-term rental business is what he had in mind. But, the question is, unless you exclude it, yeah, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's happening all around us.
Oh, yeah.
There's no reason why it can't happen or wouldn't happen in these circumstances.
Yep, that's where, to overlap it, I would put it elsewhere. Just reference it as it already exists.
Okay.
That way, we make sure we.
So Bill, you would want to see short-term rentals?
Well, I'm not trying to encourage it, but I think to assume that, I mean, I think your suggestion is we've got a short-term rental, we've got regulations, so what's the point of mentioning it here? Because this would be subject to those regulations.
Well, I think the point is that they wouldn't be able to do short-term rentals on this type of a.
Well, if that's the case, then if that's what we want,
Then it should be in there.
then,
She's got it under proposed restrictions. So,
okay.
regardless of how you feel about it, that's where it's under restrictions.
So no short-term rentals, in other words.
Yeah, it's clear once you put it in the context.
Okay,
I see what you
that's
mean,
fine.
yeah.
Yes, that's where Patrick has it listed.
Okay.
All right,
So the next bullet, is it no pre-existing non-conforming rebuilds would qualify? Or
I didn't
it would
understand.
qualify?
yeah, so that, I had to read this like 18 times.
Yeah, me too.
Under 4, for the large crowd we have, it reads pre-existing non-conforming rebuilds, an existing parcel with a single-family pre-existing non-conforming structure would be eligible with the following conditions. The non-conformity cannot increase, so that's just no new non-conformities. If your house already
Right.
has problems with the rear setback, you can't go further. The total square footage of all units is at or below the existing square footage of the single-family home the units are replacing. So that's where the contiguous also comes into play.
So Kara, I also found this wording, can you, work on it?
Yeah.
I think you're pulling this from Patrick's papers, and I think this is a mixture of restrictions and allowances, frankly.
Yeah,
It's not clear which is which.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah, and I go into.
I think this item, bullet 4, is actually permitted, it's not restricted.
I agree.
It doesn't belong in a list of restrictions, I don't think.
Okay.
I mean, maybe you can just,
I could work with Mike and see,
yeah,
maybe, I'm not sure the plan, if this is going to the select board, when or if this is going down that path, but we've gotta seam it up here for sure.
Yeah.
And then, you can see my comments there, the number 7, this is an amendment to the current allowed square footage, so.
Where's that picture?
Number 7.
Forward, you'll see my comment. I guess
See, mine aren't numbered.
CF7, it says in that little, I just noticed.
Oh, we don't have that.
Oh,
In the red, in the comment, I guess they're numbered.
Oh, I'm not looking at
where,
that.
so
Sorry.
where, are you on the table of uses now, or?
No, I'm in flex parcel zoning still, under the restrictions, number 4.
Okay, but I thought you were doing your slide deck.
Yeah.
But what were
there's-
you just showed us something else.
Yeah, what are
Yeah,
you
this
in
is,
here?
these are just this is.
Your notes.
Okay, so just so you know, there's bullets on what was
Yes,
posted.
okay, so number 4 out of the 6
Okay,
of the restrictions.
Okay.
Where it reads pre-existing, non-conforming.
Bunch of-
Did you find it? Okay,
yeah,
so if, we can work on that and see if he wants that moved or.
did that, city.
It sounds like what you just said, or that looks like what you just said.
All right, we'll move on. Under number 5, the aggregate limits in terms of square footage of something in the order of magnitude 4,500 square feet total. So with number 5, that also, according to the table of dimensional requirements, the R2 and R4 maximum lot coverages are 8,712 feet and just over 17,400 square feet. So that's for R2 and R4.
Great.
So this would actually change, this would become more restrictive for those 2 districts with that square footage.
So, yeah, I struggled with this one too. Does that mean no more McMansions? I'm not advocating for mansions. I'm just saying,
Answer that one.
is that what that in effect is saying?
I think the 4,500 square feet is a way to control the size of what's being built, however many units. I think that's the idea. I think that plays into the modest housing idea as well as.
And that's different from what we have now by how much?
Big time.
Big time.
Yeah.
Like-
We're at
Thousands.
10% lot coverage.
Thousands of square feet.
1,000 square feet. So we're cutting down the lot coverage by like potentially half.
Yeah,
At least.
we are.
Oh, yeah.
And I wonder if that's an unintended consequence. I mean, if somebody, are we prohibiting the building of large houses
I think that was,
that are in conformity with existing bylaws in terms of lot coverage and height and all the rest of the things?
4,500 square feet is, 45, is not,
Pretty big.
is pretty big already, but.
I understand.
Yeah, but still,
Split into 3
Right.
or split into 2.
yeah.
I think that's I think that's in his thinking of the.
right, so I think,
This term.
Bill, so are you trying to understand whether this is prohibiting the usual, a single family? It doesn't, I don't think.
Yeah, if this applies only to 2 and 3 unit
Correct.
buildings,
Correct,
then I'm okay.
yeah,
And I'm not advocating for 10,000 square feet houses.
Yeah.
But there are properties in this town where a 10,000 square foot house is probably perfectly okay, if somebody wants to have a big
Look,
house.
It has been in the past.
Yeah,
I mean, in many cases, it's our bread and butter, so.
Yeah.
So I don't
That's my
really.
point.
Yeah,
But part of this initiative in front of you is, I know you just said if it's the 2 and the 3.
Yeah,
What we're
okay.
talking about right now is 1, 2, and 3.
Right,
That's
okay.
just where we are.
So it would be,
It would limit
It would
a
restrict the
single-family
one.
house in our
So-
board 4,500 square feet.
I'm sorry?
for that
It would.
clarification.
In this proposal, Patrick includes single family as well as 2 and 3 family in R2 and R4 to be limited to 4,500 square.
Yeah.
I missed that, where's
I think
that?
if that's the case, if that's what he intends.
Single family.
I've got a problem with that because if it's, I think you can, it makes sense that it's 2 and 3 It's a single property. We're essentially outlawing big houses, really big houses on appropriate lots.
Yeah.
Carrie, I'm not seeing that. Where, can you point me to where I need,
That's in his proposal.
what proposal?
His original,
Patrick's original proposal from.
Oh, that sort of that white sheet thing?
yeah.
Yeah, it's got the same 3 houses, that's what.
Right. So since we're on that, I just, do you have that handy? Because
I don't have a copy of that on me, it's in the office here. That's
Jen. So I just want to point out, just so everybody's aware that on the first page,
What are we looking at?
this right.
Oh, his?
Remember this?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I don't have it with me.
So it says here, in Stockbridge's R2 and R4 zones, one can build a single-family home by right on parcels of a minimum of 2 and 4 acres respectively. And then it goes on to say there is no limit to the size these homes may be, but they must be single-family. That's not entirely true. We have setbacks and we have a, percentage.
Block coverage.
Yeah, so just to be clear about that.
Yeah, I think maybe the answer here is to make that 5th bullet point, the aggregate limits, applicable to 2 and 3 unit properties, but not to 1, 2, and 3 unit properties. I mean, that's,
I'd agree with you there.
Right, yeah. I mean, I'm a little torn because I'm interested in sustainability. On the other hand, if I'm thinking about what our local economy is, it's very attractive, single-family residential properties. So,
which can be, can be, produce significant property tax revenues.
yeah, I mean, one way to think about it,
But-
one thing we could think about is for these larger properties, looking at more sustainable building practices like LEEDs, things like that.
some sort of requirement in
Yeah.
construction, sort of.
Yeah, I mean,
mean,
you want to get controversial, solar panels.
But don't we already have a green initiative?
it's addressing, they're working on lighting right now. They're not anywhere. Laura is very focused.
No, if somebody's going to build a new property, it has to be within the green guidelines.
Right, yeah.
Where's that?
But I'm not sure they include solar panels.
Well, they may not, but I mean, it's building materials and insulation and.
Paint,
All that stuff,
low
yeah.
volatility.
But that's not
paint.
in our zoning bylaw.
It's part of, it's not a zoning bylaw, but isn't it part of a state mandate or something? Not a state mandate, but we accepted it, so.
Yes, we voted to be a green community.
We're a
So
green
there-
community, but we do not have any bylaws that address building
Well,
materials.
I know I don't remember exactly where, but I know that it's decidedly more expensive to build a house under the green
Yes.
initiative that we have in town versus what it was before.
Yes.
Now, how that plays out, I don't know the particulars, but
Save on your energy bills and all
That's
that.
what we have to look at.
there you go. So it must be in the building permit process.
Sarah, can you research that a little bit? I'd like to know more about that.
Me too.
Certainly, there's nothing in our zoning bylaw that addresses,
It's something that we accepted,
It is,
not a
we voted on
bylaw, but it's a green thing,
Yeah, it's like
right?
it's not an overlay district, but it's an initiative.
New
we're
construction.
part of the Green Communities Act, and as part of that, we have a green committee. But if there's something at the building inspector level, I'm unaware of it, and I'd love to know about it.
And I wonder about if, what are the regulations, the green regulations, and who enforces them? Is there a requirement for
I
solar
think
panels?
that's Ned's bailiwick.
Yep,
I don't think so.
it's building code.
Is there a requirement to recapture rainwater?
Maybe not that, but there is, I think when when somebody goes to build a house, I think they have to check off the boxes for the green initiative with Ned, right? And he's got to inspect it and make sure that's what they did.
Right.
And
And they have,
then you,
there are businesses that come in and check the house before and send us a report, what they find, before Ned signs off on it.
Yeah, it's building code.
It would be good to have that. Yeah, I'd love to see that.
Excuse me, is that at the cost of the homeowner, right? Those businesses come in and check them?
Yeah, they have, yep.
So, I mean, I just had my home done by Mass Save, right? But that was entirely my decision, so it sounds like this is something,
That wasn't.
Yeah.
That's
house
new
being built.
construction.
new construction.
it's new construction.
Okay.
It does raise the question of why, when we built the highway garage, we didn't put solar panels on it.
We used to have solar panels on the highway
But they
garage.
didn't work.
But they,
They never worked?
They never worked.
There's no shade trees in the way. There's no reason why there shouldn't be solar panels on that building.
That's a,
Not that it uses a lot of electricity, I
Well,
guess.
talk to the Green Committee about it.
That becomes the question, is how much electricity you use to make it worth your while.
Yeah.
Well, the thing is though, you can generate electricity to offset your other electricity.
Send it back to the grid.
They'll look, when they do the assessment, like I don't have enough sun for solar panels, so I couldn't do it. But they will tell you whether,
In the
you
old
know,
landfill, you know.
they make the grade of
Which
sunshine.
should generate enough to pay
they were
for this
the
building.
original sort of solar
But they
panels.
could do the same thing.
Sorry, Marie?
on the
They
highway
were
garage.
the original kind
For
of
something
solar
else.
panels that were, and they had a hard time getting rid of them when they, what to do with them because they're,
And that-
there's
But
no
you
place to
gotta
put
recycle
them.
them.
But the technology
When you're
has
done.
gone
But it's
way up
changed so
in-
much.
in recent
Yeah.
years. They're less expensive, they're
Yeah.
more sustainable.
It's so
Pay
much.
themselves off.
Mike's on here, we could ask him.
Hey, Mike,
Okay.
we have a question for you.
Yep.
What are there any parameters for green building when somebody does new construction that you're aware of?
So because Stockbridge is a green community, it had to adopt the stretch code
That's
that developed the baseline building energy code. So that was any community that's become a green community had to adopt that. So that's all done through the building inspector and through NED.
What does that translate to?
There's just elements within the green code. I can definitely get you exactly what it is. So what I can do is send it to the board what the stretch code means for the community.
That'd be
But
great.
it is, just regulations that include an energy code. So you have to have certain level of insulation inside, I think it's R20, certain levels when you adopt it, which means it does cost more to do some of those things. The Windows codes and other things such as that. So
And does that get,
Can't go
you
to
know,
Home
does
Depot and buy one.
that get reviewed after the construction is finished?
it's done as part of the building permit process.
Backed up
I
because of
see.
supply chain issues.
And do you happen to know how that compares to like LEED certification?
It's in the bottom.
Leads is just a further
A further step?
level you can get, and then you can get credits and other things toward a building project if you're doing some of those. So
Okay.
get your lead certification. But what we have is just a certain level under the stretch code that when we became a green community, we agreed to adopt it. So I will send out information tomorrow on exactly what the impact of the stretch code is.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, so if we move down, you'll see, what does your sixth bullet point begin with under restrictions?
For very large parcels?
Perfect. So I just question, what counts as very large? Is it X percentage larger than the minimum lot area? Is it frontage?
I think it's moderate.
There's a lot that could be read between those lines. You should have a slide that reads the benefits for the title.
Proposed benefits, yeah.
Proposal, yep. So this just goes into Patrick's flexible solution to the housing challenges. And, he came up with a number of benefits that could materialize this with the zoning update, including the preserving as an option, the ability for homeowners to build within our existing zoning. And he mentions this creates no new limitations on what is allowed in the town But as we discussed, that would change the square footage allowance for R2 and R4, as we discussed with that 4,500 square foot number. Skipping down a couple, unless you have questions on incentivizing parcel owners. So under the affordable, workforce, luxury, senior, and downsized bullet points,
Where, oh, I see.
you know, workforce is a very specific term. Maybe add market rate between the workforce and the luxury. Luxury is mostly aesthetics.
I'm sorry, Cara, where are you?
I'm describing in his initiative from
Oh,
January.
okay.
He's got a few definitions thrown out
Okay.
there under the developers with enhanced flexibility.
Okay,
So, you know, luxury is mostly aesthetics and amenities and features not formally considered a class, like the affordable, like workforce or market rate, those kind of terms would have to be fleshed out. And that's, you know, perhaps where that affordability of the 50% of the ADUs, that kind of would certainly.
Yeah, I'd like to see a little more clarity on some of these things.
Yeah. And then again, the providing starter homes for families and or first-time home buyers, sounds great to me. A rental or short-term unit, again, he's got that listed under there in his initiative. I would just suggest, again, referring to the existing bylaw. They can be considered two separate ideas.
I'm sorry, where are you now?
Under the bullet point, provide starter homes for families.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't include all these bullets under there because the slide would have been too large. So these are just edits from me on his initiative that he spread out a while ago. So, you know, and then you've got the assessment slide too, which is really, I think, what Bill was hunting for. So do you have, you know, comments, questions on that
Has a similar
assessment?
program been put in place in any other communities?
So there are different ideas. There's what's known as, let me see, there's flexible zoning techniques, which the American Planning Association posts on their website, which I read a decent amount about. That includes floating zones, overlay zones, incentive zoning, performance requirements, and unified development ordinances. Really long-winded definitions. But we can certainly get those links over to you if you're interested in reading about those differences. The town of Sandwich, Massachusetts has something similar in their bylaws. It's very short definition and it's for commercial. So you can kind of make a comparison, but it's a touch different.
Has it been implemented?
Yeah.
Have you seen it?
you know, I'm reminded that last year, an affordable housing trust was established and funded.
Yeah.
There's a group that's sort of working on that. Are you part of that, Carl?
Well,
Dave Bykowski is chairing it.
the
Nancy.
Community Preservation Commission has funding for affordable housing.
Yep, that's one of, and historic housing.
Quite a lot. I mean, that's.
I just raise it because I would think that we ought to be talking with you all, or with you. I don't know whether a joint meeting would make some sense, but if we're trying to figure out how to make housing more affordable with Patrick's proposal, I don't think we should be working independent of the Affordable Housing Trust Commission.
I would agree.
Well, we're still working on the wording
Yeah.
of
I mean-
what it could be. So we sent our final draft to Mike Canales can answer. He was in the meetings. and it's going to the attorneys for the
So-
final wording.
So is it too early, Mike, for the planning board to be talking with the Affordable Housing Trust Commission or whatever it's called?
So what we've done so far is we formed the initial committee to establish the document for the trust, which we now have. That's going to be going to the selectmen soon. Then the selectmen will actually establish the trust itself, and that other board that there's 5 of us on will be dissolved, and then the trust will actually take over. The trust, it's an interesting one of how much overlap between zoning and the attempt through zoning to do affordable housing, and then the difference between the Affordable Housing Trust that's actually looking to implement strategies, invest in housing, improvements for homes and other things. I think there is some room to talk about it, but it really is 2 different paths.
Okay,
I mean, they just, at the CPA, Community Preservation Act, Community Preservation Committee, they voted, what was it, $125,000?
Oh, yeah.
They increased it.
The trust is gonna have $225,000 in its account to start after this town meeting, of which it can invest up to 80% of that toward affordable housing. That's not a lot of money.
And just in my humble opinion, the affordable housing that has taken place in the past has been because of organized efforts that aren't necessarily legislative the way the planning board and the zoning bylaws are. I mean, these are projects that people got behind and raised money for. I certainly don't think that our zoning bylaws should stand in the way of any of that effort, but they're not going to create the impetus. So, I think it's good to hear that that's going on.
Well, they sort of can. I mean, my concern here is that, what is the actual need of our residents and whose need are we actually addressing?
yeah.
And, just as an example, I know I know quite a number of elderly people living on fixed incomes, and I'm not sure that this is addressing their needs.
Yeah, I'm not either. I hear what you say, Mike, but I have to believe that there's likely to be some synergies between what we're talking about right now, what Cara's been presenting to us, and this Affordable Housing Trust Commission or Trust Fund. They may be on separate paths, but the goal is creating affordable housing, right? In this town, or expanding it. And
I think Carl put it correctly. I mean, the Affordable Housing Trust is going to be developing the actual projects, but not the zoning around it. That's the way I took what you were saying.
Yeah, their project will have to fit within what we do.
Yes.
yeah, well, but I think that's a reason for collaboration, it seems to be.
Oh, yeah, we should talk.
Yeah,
I think when the new committee comes up, then it would be someone you
Yeah.
would talk with.
Okay.
Yeah, not the committee that's on there now.
Right.
okay.
So what I'm kind of hoping we can, if we talk with them, that we can talk within the context of what we currently have on our books.
Yes,
Because,
And not recreate the wheel.
yeah,
and
Because I don't want to go down the NRPC road where I would like to be very specific in what we're trying to accomplish. Because we can talk about, it already feels like we're going round and round. And without a specific idea and a specific goal. And I don't want to recreate the wheel. If we can work within something that we have now maybe enhance it, maybe if we need to. But I'd like to see the need. I know Patrick presented this and
But I mean, I think Kara's on the right track, is that you need to get some specific detail. You just can't talk in, these nebulous terms of what does median mean and what does, affordable mean? And, those are all just, you got to have like in the brackets, what does that mean?
And I love the thought of bringing young families back here, but I would really like to see where we have evidence that we have the ability to make that happen. Because Stockbridge is inherently unaffordable. And I know that's exactly what he's trying to say here and to do, but I really want to be specific about what our goal is and how we might get there. Because I just don't want to go round and round for 18 months and like we have.
Okay.
This was just the first
Yeah.
tackle that I had.
And that's no
on this.
criticism.
No, I-
Not at all. I hope you know that.
I do.
You've been terrific.
You've just been,
Yeah, thank you.
just been
I'm
through a
tackling what I'm.
period
I'm
of.
tackling what I'm given
Yeah.
and learning as I go.
Yeah, no. it's-
No, we appreciate your effort,
Me too,
believe
I
us.
appreciate
Yeah,
it.
absolutely, yeah. So far, so good.
Aren't you glad we asked you to go first?
I may not have to heat up the leftovers. And then there are, I would be remiss if I didn't add the little last blurb I've got here.
Oh, yeah.
There are other varieties of housing types and sizes and locations a community can achieve as a matter of right or by special permit in accordance with the state's zoning act. So I've been learning a little bit about the zoning act myself, luckily. And there's a short laundry list of, anything from allowing new residential and mixed-use developments with alternative site patterns. So just kind of mixing up the dice there, for example, flexible development or clustering. There is a cluster, you have a cluster of five.
We do.
And or a variety of housing types, detached, single-family, townhouse, duplex, garden apartment, et cetera. Another idea is providing density bonuses or other forms of zoning relief in exchange for including some affordable units. Another one, which is just being dusted off, actually, in a lot of municipalities, re-legalizing historic housing forms, such as duplex, triplex, or quadruplex in all residential areas or some residential areas. Establishing zones where multifamily housing is allowed by right, which is similar to this. Zoning by right for open space through open space residential design, used fairly frequently for conservation subdivisions. And lastly,
Been there, done that.
these techniques can lead to reduced construction costs, more efficient land use, and greater housing choice, but they may not produce more income restricted affordable units without an inclusionary requirement. So we're circling the idea, I think, here tonight, and I think that's the idea of the first discussion. So I'm glad we got that smart or stretch code. I've gotta check that out. And
Me too.
yeah, so that's and see, unless there are comments, questions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yep.
That was good.
Good. Thanks for shoving me to the front of the line.
Sure. I had a feeling this was going to take a while.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Absolutely.
How'd you know about that stuff?
Thank you.
I just always knew it.
Assessors or when you were chair or? You about it?
So what happens from here?
I just remember the whole green community piece and all that.
I think we talk with Mike
Is Cara done? For this,
at this point.
at this point?
Yeah, I think.
Cara, do you have other, is there more you're going to do on this aside from the stretch code? Are you,
I was gonna look into the rest of those questions. Is there more as a board that you'd like me?
no, I didn't know what you had, if this was the end of your working on this particular thing? Or are you doing
That's
it?
up to the board. I feel like I'm
Until
gonna
we-
dig a little bit into the
Until we
questions that
do
were brought up
something else.
tonight. And then, lump that in with my next presentation, either about the bylaws or the zoning, ADUs, or, my next meeting here.
Okay,
I'll answer those
Thank you.
questions for you, okay?
Yeah, thanks so much.
thank you.
Hi, Kara.
You.
So in this revised order, the next item is report from me on my conversation with town council about subdivision regulations. Several meetings ago, we talked about, as we looked at subdivision regulations in the context of, what comes if we're not going to do a natural resource and historic preservation zoning bylaw. Can we operate with what we've got in effect? And so I did talk, it seems like a long time ago, at least a month ago, and haven't refreshed it with Donna Brewer, town council. We, under the subdivision regulations, under chapter 41, we can regulate development to meet to require certain conditions. For example, infrastructure, numbers of units, lengths of cul-de-sacs and driveways, which if met, would lead to approval of development of a subdivision. And by right, which was the question, means no special permit or variance required. The real difference between that and the special permit is that the special permit is done on a lot by lot basis. It's not a group
Overall,
of buildings. It's lot by lot. But there is discretion of the planning board. The planning board does have discretion to approve special permits, within reason. No.
Question, Bill, so this is within the subdivision bylaw?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm not sure where that leaves us, other than, unless somebody has questions. This all started with the discussion of, okay, if we're not going to do natural resource historic preservation zoning bylaw, which we agreed we wouldn't, is the subdivision bylaw sufficient? Is the existing cottage era estate bylaw sufficient, or do we want to change it? And I think those questions remain unanswered.
But we had this discussion too with this latest project on the bowl, whether we had discretion to reduce that. Talk with her at
I
all?
didn't ask because this was before that came up, those intense discussions at our last meeting came up. I think we've got, it may make sense to have Donna talk to us directly, talk to all of us about what discretion really means. To what extent can we stretch discretion? To a point where we can defend a decision we make and not be taken to court by an applicant, a property owner who feels we've abused our discretionary.
Question, is there a difference when you were talking to Donna and you were telling us what she said, you were talking about subdivisions. Is there a difference in our regulations if something is in a subdivision than if it's like that lot we were talking about last week, a totally separate lot that's not within anything? But are there different zoning bylaws within a subdivision than just somebody's lot?
Well, there are restrictions, and they're in our bylaws already, in the subdivision bylaws, about things like driveway length and cul-de-sacs and.
But if we're talking amount of coverage on a lot, is a lot, like last week, different than a lot in a subdivision? Is that covered?
Depends on,
Well,
so
it's
basically,
the circumstances, that's
Yeah.
the issue.
yeah,
He's, according to.
Like with the subdivision, when they say by right, that only means that if they check off all the boxes for what is required in our subdivision bylaws, then they're all set to go. But if they want to shade it,
Do
or,
something
they want to
different,
do something that's like, for instance, on the Dugway, we allowed them to have a longer driveway with a cul-de-sac so that they didn't build as many houses, and they also didn't cut these canyons for driveways all the way down the Dugway.
So Marie, like, to the question of special permit,
Yeah,
special permit refers to a type of request.
for a specific thing and a
It
specific,
ties to the bylaw that
right.
you would be using. So in the case of the lake request last week, that ties to the Lake and Pond Overlay.
You can, 10%
Bylaw.
of the
Right.
thing is at the lake. I mean, is it the LPOD?
It ties to the LPOD bylaw that we have on our books.
Okay,
If it's a special permit within the subdivision, then that ties, the special permit ties to
different
wording.
rules for subdivision.
It ties,
The
it's a
lot.
process that ties to a bylaw. It could be any bylaw where special permit is part of the wording.
Okay.
But I think Bill's right in saying that, ultimately, subdivision or whatever, I mean, individual lots
Needs.
are
full
considered as individual lots.
permit. Okay, even, yeah,
I mean,
Even if it's-
there's not a distinction between,
thank you. I just,
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't have a special permit within a subdivision.
But I think that's what he said.
There is special permit wording within the subdivision
It's a
bylaw.
lot by lot. That's what my question was.
I don't think there is.
I don't think so.
I don't think there is. There's
That could not be, that couldn't be.
the review of applications by the planning board, which is kind of we review it, but then what do we do? Do we?
Well, and then if they want something different, then it's a negotiation.
Yeah, I
and
guess
then it's a
that's,
special permit.
No,
No,
it's just
not
within the parameters of the
we
subdivision.
put conditions on it, I guess.
Like I just said, we let them have a longer driveway
Right. For the whole, yeah.
for
So
the
that
whole
was a whole.
thing, so that they didn't build more houses, and they also didn't build, 10
Right.
canyon cut driveways to
Yeah.
go up to their property.
Right, I just checked, there's no special permit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Why did it come up, what was the context for our,
I think what was, it's been such a long time since I talked with Donna. I probably should have talked with her again this week to refresh my memory. I think what started it was the question arose, does the subdivision bylaw that we have on the books now, is it satisfactory? Even though it doesn't, there's no special permit required, and what does by right mean?
I think I have it.
Go ahead.
So I think it was because under the subdivision bylaw, there's a section for a public hearing, and it reads, before action on the definitive plan is taken, a public hearing shall be held by the planning board. And we always associate public hearings with special permits, and I think that's what we were trying to understand. Does that sound right, Wayne? Yeah.
Very second.
What section of the bylaw?
It's under, so, no, it's under the subdivision, and it's,
Oh, not cluster sub.
no, it's the subdivision, and it's section 4.205, public hearing. And we always associate that with, the LPOD.
Oh, by right,
Yeah. So for me, it's on page, hold on.
So the subdivision part?
I'm not finding it.
It's on page, in my bylaw, it's on page 10 of the subdivision bylaw, 4.205.
I have to say, I complain about our enumeration.
Yeah, there are no pages on my
I have a
copy of
10
this.
but it doesn't, about
what did you say, Kate?
Page 10 of the
4.2? Is it 4.205?
4.205.
Yeah. It looks like this. I have page 10. It's in this subdivision.
Right,
That's it. Oh, no, 205. It's on the page. I think. 4.205.
okay. Public hearing,
It says
yes.
public hearing.
I see. Yeah,
I have it on, on page 2.
so before action is taken, a public hearing shall be held. But the action, the public hearing does not result in the issuance of a special permit. Yeah. It's curious, but I'm curious.
It said before final action, a joint meeting of representatives of interested town boards and agencies to discuss all views should be held, and then there's review and decision next. In reviewing and determining whether to approve with modifications, or deny a definitive plan, the planning board may consider whether the definitive plan is in conformance with the design standards in section 5 of these regulations, and with all of the substantive and procedural provisions of the planning board rules and regulations. The planning board may impose such restrictions as it determines are necessary to promote public safety or protect the environment or carry out the provisions of the board's rules and regulations.
If they've met those things, that's where it becomes problematic.
Right, and the checkoff list is all checked off.
And they always have it checked off.
Yeah.
Yes.
And our role would be to approve with modifications, or deny.
But I
So,
think you can only deny if they don't follow the regulations.
Right.
You want something
where the by
different.
right
You can
piece comes
deny
in.
That's-
something
that-
different.
that is by
But if
right,
you
yeah.
if they follow that checklist,
Then-
it seems like
It is,
But you
it's,
have
it's
to-
by right.
give them,
Well, there's that final sentence, which is,
may impose such restrictions.
right,
But but the first sentence says approve with modifications, so it does give,
it seems like
there is some discretion.
it appears that way.
yeah, if there's something.
I mean, it would be good to know a little bit more about
Yeah.
that.
As
I'll
long
talk-
as the applicant was willing. If
Yeah.
they weren't, then
And you're going to court.
you're going to court.
Right, I'll talk with Donna
Yeah.
again.
But the last court case had to do with a handshake deal and a mistake, right, Gare?
It had everything to do with a missed, well, it was actually a date.
Yeah,
So it got approved
By default.
by default,
Yeah.
not by right, but by default.
Oh,
thank you. Was that,
After a significant expenditure of legal fees, I think, yeah. The other point on this agenda item is, or the next agenda item was discussion with the Conservation Commission. I did talk with Ron Broker, and he is delighted to take over the LPOD bylaw. I reminded him about the last time we offered up a bylaw for their taking.
Oh, the water,
The
stormwater.
Stormwater. And he said, yeah, I think it makes sense. We'd be happy to do it. Let's figure out what the process is. I talked with Mike Canellis and he thinks it's fine. The issue is it would require Attorney General approval. And apparently the municipal law unit of the AG's office looks at, according to Donna, looks at the history of how this portion, this bylaw has been administered. And generally, they don't like changes to make it, to move it around within the regulatory framework. But this general rule doesn't always apply. She said she has a good relationship with someone in the AG's municipal law unit department and could talk to them informally in advance to see if this change could be approved or not, if there were.
I just think it makes much more sense to be in the conservation
I do too.
jurisdiction.
I've heard that they're reluctant to mess around with local boards, and I think Stockbridge in particular.
Yeah.
But the other one went through,
Why would they?
you know, I won't say easily, but it went through.
Yeah.
So,
And she said it wasn't necessarily a long, drawn-out process either.
I think we ought to pursue it.
Do they have to go to town meeting first?
Yeah.
It does.
Definitely.
It does have to go to town meeting.
Is it too late to put it on this?
I
Yeah.
assume so, yeah,
It would have to be,
next year.
yeah, next year, or if they have they
A
may have
special in
pro-
between, yeah.
One in the fall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
I haven't heard about a fall meeting. Anybody heard
Probably
about a fall
take us
meeting?
till fall to get it all through the,
I mean, it seems sort of simple. Why couldn't we just
yeah.
do it? It's just a matter of transferring it over.
the only other thing that it does is have only one board look at, like five
issues
people
in
or
that
whatever, looking at the issues instead of two different boards.
plus they do it all the time.
I guess they do.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, that's the thing, the things that we're looking at, they're already doing.
Right,
You know.
but they look, yeah, it's just that like three people are giving out, or whatever, five people instead of like 10 people. Like two different boards looking at it
Right.
is,
Well, it seems like
They're
it would
just
be a
really
more
versed
efficient
in the
situation.
conservation
more efficient.
aspects of it.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Could be more political, depending.
Yeah, you're right.
You
See
know,
what you mean
it
about
could be,
spreading it out.
it could be with just one board looking at something. Not necessarily now or anything that I'm even thinking of, but it's possible it could get to be a political thing in terms of
Do we, I mean, I know boards change,
approving, yeah,
but I don't think the Concom, anybody would call the Concom a pushover.
not our
when it
Concom
comes-
now, but some Concoms, not our Concom now, but some Concoms that aren't as
Diligent.
adamant about saving, about conservation.
So you're saying kind of-
I'm saying it's
You're sort of kind
possible.
of belt and suspenders, like make sure that,
Yeah, our Concom is very, very good.
Yeah.
And they look at everything. Not all Concoms necessarily do. I'm only throwing out there that there's only one group of people looking at all of these permits.
Yeah, I hear you.
Well, but it would still go to select board.
The select board have a certain of what they approve, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Yes, that's true. So there
Instead
are
of
two.
3 boards, it would be 2.
Yeah. The thought crossed my mind that we
Yeah.
might
No,
not
so-
always have as good
Yeah.
conservation board as we do now.
It's an appointed board, right? It's not elected.
Yes,
Right.
it is. It's appointed forever and ever until they
By the
die,
select board.
till they sink in the mud.
To a certain.
No, by the
Supreme Court.
moderator. Well, doesn't the moderator
I
appoint
think the
those
moderator
committees?
appoints.
No, the select
No,
board.
select board does.
Select board does.
The moderator
you know-
does the finance
I
committee.
mean, we're elected by the people.
So Concom is
By the
is
select-
appointed, it's a 7-person board, and they cannot have an alternate. They can have an associate. They can't have an alternate. So it's 7 people. And to a certain extent, it's going to be self-selecting for people who are interested in conservation, I think. But I think you have a valid concern for sure.
Well, I mean, how experienced are we all? Anybody elected into this position knowing all
That's
that
right.
stuff?
Right. So we're just looking at it as people,
Yes.
which makes sense. I mean, just the guy off the street, which, not as,
Yeah.
but, which makes sense. We don't have any skin in the game. You know, we're just,
I just think they have a keener,
I agree with you, and they still have their,
but I
agree.
also appreciate what you're saying about spreading it out.
I mean, we have a great conservation board. Not everybody does. I mean, I only threw that out there as something to think about when we give up
Making
a,
a conservation agent, so, you know,
I think they've talked about it.
yeah.
yeah, I
Which would
mean,
be a step in the right direction.
I think so.
yeah, I mean, it's fine with me. I just wanted to throw that out there for us to think about it.
They already
if-
want the power.
If,
I
you know.
think it's
What, Wayne?
higher on the
I just
side
have to
of,
have another little conversation.
higher on the side of efficiency. And if we can
Okay,
eliminate
that's fine.
one body looking at the same property for the, more or less, for purposes that really fit in obvious ways with another body, I would do it. Yes, there's a risk that the Concom could go rogue and,
Well, I don't mean that, but you know what I'm saying. I mean,
I do know what you
and I'm fine with their doing it. I just thought that's something we might want to think about.
well, I'll talk to Mike again. Mike was, said it's fine, and it does happen. You can get such approvals.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine.
And I've not spoken to the select board. He didn't think we needed to go to the select board.
Well, I think it would just,
But I think it's probably good.
We did last time, I think.
yeah,
policy.
I think that it's just
We had
good
to
to,
with the stormwater runoff.
Did we?
yeah,
We did? Yeah, okay.
I think it's good to get their buy-in on it.
I will talk to Roxanne and
There you go.
others.
Makes the train run smoother.
Okay. Where are we?
Dinner.
Discussion of possible changes in lot coverage. This came up at the end of the last meeting because of concerns that, as some of you expressed, the applicant at 8 Hawthorne Road was pushing the limits. I mean, going right to the limits. And if we're concerned about that, the one answer is to change the limit. If we don't like 10% lot coverage or 15%, we can make it 8 or 12 or whatever we want, I guess. It's a bylaw change. It would need to go through the, you know, laborious process, but are we interested in doing that?
Well, if we're moving it to the Concom,
Not,
Well, would this be under the Lake and Pond?
Yeah,
I guess it is only under Lake and Pond,
Yeah.
isn't it?
That's what we
It
were-
only relates. Does it ever come up in other circumstances? Okay, if it goes to lakes, that becomes their problem
their opportunity.
or
Because those are
opportunity.
such small lots there. That's part of the problem.
Well,
Those lots are so
around the
tiny.
lake.
Run into
Around the
it.
lake, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Other
Very-
lots that are 2 and 4
Yeah.
acres, not, it's a
and
different.
you know, the mindset nowadays is, you know, you want to get it as big as you possibly can.
Well, it's this whole game with, you know, with, I mean, obviously there are setbacks, but, you know, I mean. you know,
The- yeah, the
existing-
applicant and
existing,
the team.
You know,
As long as they don't go closer, they can go longer.
Right.
yeah,
And they
and
can
higher.
Only,
no, there's a height limit.
there's a 35
Yeah, but if
feet.
it's already
Yeah.
just a cottage, it can go,
Well, that's.
that's the-
35 feet,
no, I know, but
35
a normal cottage
limit
is one
the
story.
estate.
right, but then they changed the grade. There are games
Yeah.
that are being played for sure, I think. Anybody been down to Mac Shores?
No,
Change it?
Well, Bill, that's a good point. I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, you know, do we want to,
Let's go into
I think if it
Concom.
stays
If
with
it
us,
goes
then we
to-
would tackle it. If not,
Yeah.
then let them make the
But
decision.
if Ron is expressing the view of his commission, which I assume he is, he said they'd take it.
Yeah.
And I think that gives them even more,
There are a lot of lake users on that.
it gives them more room for discussion in that they'll do the conservation piece and, you know, there's more give and take and I think
Right.
it would actually work to the benefit.
Right.
Because if somebody wants something, maybe they would make the lot size smaller in order to get another condition.
Right.
Right.
That one was just, it was a rub because it was maximized in every possible way. And it would have felt better if there was some give back on one area, two areas that you said, okay, you're not just taking this thing to the absolute nth degree.
Well, there's a question in my mind in terms of the actual measurements there.
Well,
Okay. Are we
Can
gonna-
I say something? Hello?
Yes, please, go ahead. Yes.
Anita Schwerner.
Go ahead.
Just from what you're speaking about, I think it is very concerning as someone who lives around the lake to see what's going on these small lots and how things are being pushed. And I applaud you for discussing this. And it seems like it'll be a while if there's this process to transfer the authority from the planning board to the Lake Pond Overlay District. I mean, the transferring it to Concom. So, would it be possible for you to start looking at that? Because you are the planning board and could at least make recommendations as to lot size or lot coverage, just rather than waiting another year before tackling this.
Well, I think, are you suggesting that the planning board, before it hands over responsibility for Lake and Pond Overlay District, restrict the lot size and then hand it over? Lot coverage?
Well, if it's going to be a long period of time before the transfer of authority takes place. It sounded like it had to go before town meeting.
It does.
It has to,
I think under either circumstance, if the planning board changes lot coverage,
We'd have to go before the town.
we'd have to go before town. If we send this responsibility to the Concom, we have to go before the town, and that neither one is going to happen before next year.
So you could just send recommendations to Concom when you transfer the authority.
We can.
They'll still,
Because it is upsetting what's being pushed to the limit. And oh, yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
Are there any other
I'm
comments?
losing my internet.
Thank you for
Thank you, Anita.
asking. Any other comments from the public? I don't know who the other, looks like they're,
I'm the public.
Nobody else.
okay.
Just Anita.
We have something on the agenda called sign bylaw discussion.
I crossed it off because I felt like,
Yeah.
I felt the agenda was already long enough, so,
I agree.
just take down the sign on my front lawn.
I guess my,
It's a speed sign. It's a
Hideous.
it's a flashing like Las Vegas
I thought
style
you wanted
speed.
it.
Not at all.
Stop all the speeders.
It doesn't work. And they speed just the same. And I've complained to the police and they don't care. Yeah.
Okay.
And I have to mow around.
Oh, well,
Oh, it's
So at any rate-
it's right off the road.
Well, you know, it's what I say, it's when I look at it, like, it's when I look at the window. I don't know, I was reviewing the bylaws for signs and so forth.
does it light up your bedroom at night when it flashes?
No, it's that bedroom's on the other side, thank you. It's just the kitchen. It's still inappropriate. I mean, it could be, I don't even mind. I've got lots of frontage. They could put it someplace else, but like just where it is, it's like, oh.
And it's a permanent fixture, isn't it?
no,
Apparently so.
No, it's not.
I don't know.
It's not on wheels.
Until someone runs into
The
it.
ones that are in the ground.
Oh, yeah, no, someone needs to run into it.
The one on Church.
Well, I think they have one.
Someone, I wonder who that someone might be.
I have candidates.
Are we done?
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
I
so
will,
moved.
I'll second
Second,
it.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.